All right, welcome back to the SportsMax Zone. We kick things off with football and the Ray and Nephew Jamaica Premier League. Well, action in Jamaica's top flight resumed on Wednesday with matchday 5. Persistent rain allowed only 5 of the 7 scheduled fixtures to be completed on the day. So these are the results. We had Arnett Gardens 1-0 win. 1-all draw, with Mount Pleasant. Then Montego Bay a 4-0 win against Moulins United. Waterhouse 2-1 against Bay United. Chapelton a 2-0 win against Humble Lion. Portmore 2-1 against Harbour View. And of course that Dunbehold Tivoli match, as well as the Racing United and Cavalier match, has been postponed. Well, results on the Wednesday left the table looking like this. Okay, so we have Montego Bay United at the top of the table on 12 points, Cavalier in second, Portmore United in third position on 9 points, and Waterhouse in fourth on 9 points. Of course, Harbourview in sixth, and Chapelton on 7. At the bottom of the table, we have Tivoli in 13th position and Dunbehold in the 14th spot. Dunbehold yet to pick up a point. Well, joining us now on Zoom is our JPL commentator, Dean Smith. He was on duty for the SportsMax feature games, Chapelton Maroons' 2-0 win over Humble Lion, and the 1-all draw between Arnett Gardens and Mount Pleasant. Good afternoon. Welcome to the SportsMax Zone.
Hey, good afternoon, Mariah. Good afternoon, Lance, I think it is. How are you doing?
Yeah, we're doing fine. And yes, it is Lance. He's in studio with me. So we're going to start by talking about the action in JPL. It has been very, very hot. Chapelton Maroons, 2 wins from 4 matches. Are they likely to survive this season?
All right, so that's a multifaceted question. I believe that based on how they've been playing so far this season, I would think that they would have the ability to remain in the top flight league here in Jamaica. But some of the other factors that you have to bring into consideration would be, so, for instance, the depth of the squad. How will they be able to go over a prolonged season now? Mind you, last season it was shorter than the projection for this season, where we have 3 rounds. So the wear and tear on the body, the depth of the squad, the quality of the depth, those are some considerations. But if the team as constructed, is able to play the most of the games that are ahead, I do believe that they have the potential to remain in top-flight football, especially with what we've been seeing from other teams so far.
Yeah, and this player in particular, Damari Deacon, how integral is he to Chapelton Maroons doing well this season?
Hustler, yeah, an exciting player. I really believe that he is able on his day to really open up the game in a fantastic way. Certainly he's a fan favorite wherever he goes. And I believe that as he continues to play and to train hard, remember 2 seasons ago while he was at Arnett, not one known to play the full 90. We're seeing him doing that now at Chapelton. So obviously there's a point to prove. He mentioned that in his post-match interview, when Leger asked him a few questions, he said that he wanted to prove to Arnett and to Mount Pleasant and his former employers that he had the ability to really deliver at the level. So I believe that he is motivated, and as long as he stays motivated and delivers according to his potential, he will definitely be a key cog in Chapelton Maroons staying in top flight. Now, in commentary yesterday, I mentioned that one of the assistant coaches, Jeremy Teddy Johnson, he was known for taking on players and going at players, dribbling. He is a player of that ilk. Malik Stevens, a player of that ilk, and we saw them really shutting their stuff, so to speak, and creating great opportunities. So I do believe that he has a lot to offer for the Premier League and certainly for Chapelton Maroons.
Yeah, and Chapelton Maroons coach O'Neill Bigger-Thompson seems to be doing a fairly good job. Your assessment?
Yeah, not a stranger to coaching at the Premier League level, of course. Up to midway last season, perhaps less than midway, he was assistant coach with Andrew Price at Humble Lion. So he definitely knows the league. The imprint of that team, though, I think is different from how we would have seen a Humble Lion under Andrew Price. So I really like the transitional play, the build-up structure, that they are very methodical in doing that. And I think that they have some of the good cogs, such as the experience of Avanzi and so forth, to really help them over the line. And I really do like what I've seen from him as a coach.
Yeah, and in the feature game, which was Arnett Mount Pleasant, that result ended in a 1-1 draw. Only one win this season for Arnett. What is the cause of the slow start?
All right. It's really surprising because they had a start in competition way before the rest of the teams participating in the CFU Club Shield. Of course, they won that tournament and they did well. Went on to play some of the earlier games in the CONCACAF Caribbean Cup. So seeing them not being able to win is a bit alarming. Well, they've only had one, as you mentioned. It is alarming. One of the factors that I think has contributed to that is the absence of their prolific striker, their main man up front in Fabian Reed, Parker Black. So not having him to play the full 90, he's been off with injuries in some of the games as well. I think that has impacted them. But in speaking with their coach, Xavier Gilbert, you get the idea that even though they had a third place finish last season, there are still some things that the players need to acclimatize to more and flow with his system. I mean, one of the things that many persons, I think, unanimously now say is that definitely he has what it takes to coach at this level. And we've seen that in how they've played last season. We've seen glimpses of that this season as well. And I think it's only a matter of time that, players like Warner Brown begin to become more prolific. Kenaldo Brown, I think he had a not so hot game yesterday. There were some routes that I thought he should have really channeled his run in a more curving motion. He went the wider route, and the passes, weren't able to come to him on a few instances, especially in the first half.
Yeah.
But as they get more used to the system, I do believe that they'll be able to execute and get some wins. I don't see them struggle. I don't see it as a prolonged struggle for them.
Okay, and we're going to put that now against Mount Pleasant, who dropped points for the first time this season, but they remain unbeaten. Based on what you've seen of them, are they looking likely for a top 2 finish?
It's hard to say. They definitely have a lot of quality. When you think about some of the players that they've brought on, you're talking about 2 left full backs from the winning team last year, Cavalier, in the form of Gadiel Irving and Kyle May. And then you bring in a Joshua Anglin, a Nicholas Nelson, John Claudio Ferreira, so many players they've added. And you get the feeling that the limited time that Coach Whitmore and David Ferguson has had with them is still a bit telling. But I do believe they have the quality, and certainly based on the coaching pedigree that they've had, I think as the season goes on, they'll be able to, cement some more wins. Whether or not they'll be in the top 2 is to be seen, because Cavaliers performing very creditably, and Montego Bay United, they're really playing well as well. So I can't say definitively they'll be in the top 2, but it would be a shocker, and I don't see that happening, that they'll be out of the playoff places.
Well, you just referenced the Montego Bay United, who could be considered surprise early leaders. Well, first of all, do you think it's surprising that they're top of the league at the moment?
All right, so it's a bit surprising based on the fact that we didn't know how they'd come, and we didn't know how well their new coach Rodolfo Zapata would acclimatize the league, acclimatize the players. But one of the things that he has consistently said in 2 of the matches that I've done so far, covered with Montego Bay United, he said he's so impressed with the technical ability of the players here in Jamaica. So obviously he's excited, and he's been able to structure the team in a way that plays to their strengths. So now, when you think about the lineup of the team, Leger, in a match that I did with him, he mentioned how they have the 3 midfield cogs, the 3 types of players that you really need in a midfield 3 that are able to open up a game and really do the business for them. And I think that if they continue on that trajectory, they'll be a very hard force to stop. And they've brought in some international experience in the back line. We're talking about Hospitales and Trimmingham, among others. And I really think they're a good team. I like what I like what I see from them. And up top, they have experience in the form of Arnett Gardens. Chanel Thomas, a proven goal scorer. He got a brace last evening in their match against Moulins. Owen scored the opening penalty, and Brian Brown, Rambo, he scored as well. So when you have all of their frontline players scoring and doing and getting opportunities freely, as we saw in the game, especially against Arnett Gardens, where Chanel Thomas, he really proved a lot for the Arnett Gardens defenders, getting a lot of space. I really think that they have a huge range, and they'll be able to cause damage this season.
Yeah, but how big was that win over the Moulins team, Dean? Because Moulins were coming fresh off a 4-0 victory over Chapelton Maroons, so it would have sort of brought them down to earth to be losing so heavily against Montego Bay United. But having not seen any of the games, just looking from the outside, this Mobay 4-0 result over Moulins looks like a big one.
Yeah, I think it is a big one. Mind you, Moulins, they were struggling up until they, handed a sizable beating to Chapelton Maroons. So it did come as a shocker losing 4-0 to me. When I heard, I was like, what? But it's not as if they had prior matches before where they were really showing any great measure of quality. But the season is long, and one of the things that I like that I'm seeing so far is that teams are winning, teams are losing. It's not like the past seasons where the newly promoted teams really struggled, and it caused a resignation later on. When you have more teams fighting, you get an idea that the league will be so much more competitive, and I'm really excited about that.
Yeah, and I want to ask you quickly about the Portmore win over Harbourview yesterday. Two powerhouses in the history of domestic football here in Jamaica. Portmore completing, 3 wins in a row now, I think, given the fact that their win over Harbourview yesterday followed victories over Tivoli and Vere. So is it that Portmore, after a few years, a little bit off the top flight, could, push themselves into a position to fight for the title?
Well, I hope so. Portmore is a team that I followed from my youth, before they were renamed Portmore Hazard United. Yeah, a team that I love, being someone from the rural area myself. But, all sentiments aside, I think that they have really come alive, especially in the past 3 games. One of the things that you have to bear in mind is that the coaching change just before the start of the season, I think, would have affected them. Even though Rudolph Austin was there as an assistant to David Ferguson, each coach will have their own imprint, and players getting accustomed to that sometimes take some amount of time. So it's a huge win for them. Harbourview, though, after losing the first game to Chapelton, then getting a string of positive results, you would say, well, what kind of Harbourview will we see in this season? Happy that they are back home at the compound, along Fort Nugent Drive. So happy for them, but in terms of playing on the pitch, still a lot of questions to be answered from them, and let's see how they deliver for the rest of the season.
Yeah, and just before you go, referencing the back-to-back wins they had over Montego Bay, and I think Moulins was the other team they had beaten, but then failing to win their next 2 games. So a little bit of inconsistency in the Harbourview results there under their new coach.
Yeah, and again, perhaps growing pains, or perhaps some of what we saw last season under Ludlow Bernard. I mean, it was a shadow of the Harbourview that, 2 seasons before, they were winners. But it's still early days yet. I never like to say that if I'm a coach, I'll never tell my team early days yet, because I want to start strong. But as a pundit in this particular space, I believe that they have room to make adjustments and to grow. They were beaten at home, and I think that is telling. That is something that nobody really wants, especially when you've just reopened the compound, just installed the lights, waiting now for approval for night games. Will it be a dark night? Let's see.
Yeah, well, we want to thank you so much for chatting with us here on the SportsMax Zone, Dean, and we look forward to talking to you again soon. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Well, Dean Smith there, one of our JPL commentators. We're going to take a quick commercial break and come right back.